All right, good evening. My name is Kurt Freskowski. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee, and welcome to the Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, October 17th, 2024 at 6 o'clock in the Ayer Town Hall. This is a hybrid meeting. This meeting of the Finance Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID number 860-8777-1519 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. Okay, I've called the meeting to order. The first thing I would like to do is make a motion to amend the agenda and just ordering thing. The motion would be to have the department head, police chief, who's been good enough to join us, speak first, do a quick look at the financial reporting, and then move to the senior center. And then we have a little bit more time for that. So that's my motion.
I will second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And Jim?
Aye.
Good, thank you. Well, very good. Before we get to those items, we do need to review and approve the October 3rd, 2024 meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at those? Any questions, changes, additions?
Nope. The only thing was on the first page, under item on outside committee updates, the first bullet, a rate review. There was rates will be set next meeting on October 1st at 4 p.m. Our meeting was October 3rd, so I don't think we set, the next view was in fact October 1st, so.
Yes.
I don't remember what it was, but we should fix that.
All right, I'm going to change that to October 3rd, 4 p.m. Okay, anything else?
That was it.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jim?
Aye.
Okay, approved. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a update on outside committees. Do you want to do rate review?
Sure.
I mean, I can jump in too. I mean,
Yeah, so the rate review committee approved that there was no increase in annual fees for fiscal year 2025.
No fees at all?
No increase in fees, correct, yeah.
Well, that's
So they're
the-
gonna remain the same
recommendation of the rate review, which will be presented to the select board for.
for approval. Got it.
Okay, interesting. Wasn't there, it was like 40K shortfall?
No, 3,000,
Oh, okay, well,
yeah.
where
Yeah.
did that 40K come from? Did I just remember?
Well, that was the supplemental. So it was $180,000.
It was only around 13, but we weren't,
Counted.
Dan hadn't entered in the bulk permits.
Oh, yeah,
Correct,
yep.
yeah.
And with taking that into account, it's
Right. Yeah, some of it was, I think what you were reading, Andrew, there was a $180,000, I believe, from the town, and there was a $36,000
Oh, okay,
supplement.
okay,
Yeah, so I think that's what you're looking at.
got it. Cool.
The capital planning committee met for the first time yesterday, and it was only a sort of an introductory meeting, and the treasurer, Barbara, introduced the group to clear.gov as a tool for capital planning. So that's really all we did, and then department heads will be starting to put their capital request into that software, and then at our next, they're due by October 31st, and then our next meeting will be in November, I'm not sure, I apologize, and we'll start to look at the capital planning for the upcoming budget year. That's the updates there.
Real quick, Eric.
Yes.
Eric joined via Zoom.
Oh, good. Hi, Eric. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, very good, good. So I just want to note, just real quickly, Eric and Jen are joining us by Zoom.
I will be there in about 15 minutes in person.
Okay. All right, we will keep your seat warm. Okay. Then the next item on the amended agenda then is hopefully a short report from the police chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chief. Welcome. Thank you very much for making the time to come in.
No issues at all.
Give us
Is
an
there,
update.
Mr. Chair, is there any questions I can answer straight off, or what do we want to know about in particular? Anything?
How's the recruiting process going?
How about that? Can you spell that for the record?
Yes, I will.
It's ongoing. We're in a constant state of recruiting, hiring, onboarding. We have one in the academy right now. We have one in background, doing the background investigation for a transfer, so somebody who won't have to be in the academy. And then we just had a couple interviews, so we're actively trying to bring people on. It's a buyer's market out there, and when I started, it was you were probably in a pool of a couple hundred people trying to vie for a job.
Yep.
Now people are interviewing us for the job.
Oh, got it.
We just had that over the weekend, which is the way it is, and and I think it's smart, especially in a buyer's market. The officers are looking to see the departments that are vying for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to see the department, see the facilities. Luckily, we have some really good-looking facilities, and did a short ride along with us. So it was different for us, but I can understand it, and I think that's going to be the wave of the future that we're going to have to sell ourselves.
Right, yeah.
So.
Okay, thanks.
I think really, again, this was just, the idea was here is that we usually just meet or get a presentation in the budget season in February and March, which is good, but we thought maybe it would be just another, again, I can't stress enough, quick and
Sure.
snapshot, just to see how we're doing. Again, one thing, stuff that has passed, in other words, the other thing that comes to mind, for example, is that we, oh my God, all the lockers, all the new lockers and everything, those have been put in and everything.
Yeah, so all our past capital has been completed.
Thank you.
Some of our final ones were the locker rooms, which had several components into it, but it's been completed. And they're very, very sharp looking, very functional, and I can tell you that it has changed the way that the officers are storing their equipment, which means it's getting less abused. It's not squished into stuff. So they have a main locker that's ventilated where they can keep their stuff that they wear on their bodies, and then they have individual storage lockers for bulk items such as our hazmat gear and patrol bags, things like that. So it's really improved the way that they're storing it, storing their stuff. Some of the other past ones, the patrol room and the supervisors' offices have all been redone. Remarkable difference in just in their workspaces. From everybody, it just really improves the work atmosphere when they're in there. So it's a super improvement. And we're continuing. The one that's outstanding is the one, the capital project that we're in right now, and that's gonna be for the admin wing. So that's gonna be down the deputy chief's office, the office manager, and my office. Those are in process now. Things are just delayed when they come in, but we've heard that the items have arrived at the warehouse and they're just ready to pick an install date with Chuck. And then there's some electrical work that has to get done, to coordinate all of that. So we're hoping that by this calendar year that project will be done, which is good for us, because usually we're trying to get it on the fiscal year, trying to get it completed by the fiscal year. So we're pretty confident that the calendar year this project will be done and our capital projects will be wrapped up. What else we got going on? So we just finished our first quarter of the fiscal year. So we're to take a quick look at our sheet. Quarter one, we're at 18.2% spent. We're supposed to be at 25. It's a quarter, but our numbers kind of fluctuate as to what we're spending at the time. So that number also includes a cruiser, which is about $80,000 outfitted. So that's just a big chunk that's just hasn't been spent. So some of the things that we really look at, because we know basically all of those lines are going to get spent down. So we really kind of focus on individual lines rather than the whole sheet of the police department. So we look at the department wages and the overtime. So our wages, we're at 16.5% spent, and our overtime is at 11.8% spent. So there's such a difference in that, not because we don't need the money right at this point. We just don't have the people that we're paying right now. At some point, that is going to catch up. We're also going to use that buffer in there in the event that we need to send more people to the academy than we planned for. So we plan for one person in the academy a year. We're with the way that hiring goes, we're probably looking at more than one person in the academy a year. Outfitting alone is a remarkable expense. So you're basically outfitting them twice, once for everything that they need for the academy, and then for everything that they need to be a police officer when they get out of the academy.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
So it's a remarkable expense. So that's why we get a transfer candidate that is interested in coming. It's a bonus.
Ah, okay.
So
okay.
we're.
Oh, that's interesting.
So and it's not only just not, and then the fact that we just don't have that body for the academy. So we're paying somebody and really, we're not realizing the effects on the street until 6 months later.
I have a question.
Sure.
If you send someone to the academy, are they in the hook for staying for some length of time, or that they can leave? Or is that...
They can leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we do a really good vetting process to try and
Commit.
figure out why they're coming here. And but the fact of the matter is, if we can keep somebody for 2 to 3 years, industry standard is you're doing pretty good at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Why would people want to transfer in, out of curiosity?
Grass is always greener.
Is it? Okay.
Just a fact of life right now.
So are people
Doesn't necessarily mean it's greener, but
are people
it
coming
appears
from
greener.
like as far as Boston, or is it just?
Say that again.
Are people just like, is it mostly local, or is it people coming from far in any direction? They just want to change, or just out of curiosity?
Just recently, we just had people getting out of the profession.
Oh, interesting.
It's it's just a strange atmosphere for us.
Sure.
That we're in. But to stay on the positive, we're constantly trying to find the right candidate to bring in. What we don't want to do is just put anybody into boots, because that could be just a problem waiting to happen on a multitude of levels, and we just don't need that. We've learned historically in my 30 years that that isn't the right thing to do. So, between department wages and overtime, yes, it looks like we're, way underspent for the first quarter, but there's a reason for that, and that could catch up. And I just, we talked about, don't look at our overall page for all our expenses, because, the cruisers are gonna take up, almost $100,000 right off the top of that. And then we still have maintenance agreements that come in, and those just kind of whack those pretty good. So our real variable is in the wages, in the overtime line.
Good.
And again, that's just the first quarter, and I do want to interject, that's one thing as we look at this, trying to do for, an update, is that we're looking at a quarter and stuff, so, I mean, that's just the way our the fiscal year runs and everything, too.
Yeah, and, and if we see something that is, way off the mark, then we gotta kind of look at it and find out what's happening. And that very well could be, quarter one, we just might have had a whole ton of training that we needed to do, and that just absorbed a lot of overtime for that. And then that would, tend to even out over the remaining 3 quarters. But it would be something that would want to make sure we keep an eye on, that we don't keep that level of overtime training at least discretionary overtime training.
So that's it, where you are financial. Any other notes on that, the finances? Or?
That's for, the police department. If you flipped over and looked at our dispatch budget, that's kind of like it looks like we're way overspent there right now, but we're really not. Our receipts from our reimbursements for the reimbursement grants haven't started to come in yet. And what'll happen is those will, I generally have, shock when I go, what happened? And we're like,
Well, I think
nothing's come in yet.
from what I've learned over the years now is that we have that, we work in that shared dispatch environment. So we get reimbursed from Shirley, the state.
Yeah.
There's a couple streams of money coming in.
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch base on that real quick once I just go over this on the IMA with Shirley. So one of the things that we can kind of look at, to kind of see where we're at and kind of gauge, rather than look at our some of the things that look like we're way overspent, such as our department overtime. There is some, overtime needs that need to be, done there, but we're really at our wages are at 2.2% overspent, which isn't a lot for what we do. And that's not and the receipts haven't come in yet on that as well. So we're confident that once we start getting the reimbursements from the 911 grant, those will even right out. So while we're talking about personnel wise there, we do have some movement going on in our communications section. We have 2 new full-time employees that are being trained right now, and we have a per diem that's also coming on board. So that'll start to reduce the need for the overtime, hitting the overtime line. So all of this stuff is going to start to even out all the budgets on that. So yeah, animal control is our other one that we have, and the animal control is right on the markets. That's a stipend paid position, so it happens evenly over the course of the year. So back to the dispatch. So since I think maybe the last time we met, we really couldn't hit a real solid number because it hadn't been finalized yet. But we did work out an IMA with the town of Shirley for operating the communication center with them. So for the year that we're in right now, their assessment is $175,000. The following year, it's going to be $200,000, and then the year after that, the third year of the IMA, it's going to be $225,000. So we were able to, with the help of Mr. Pomprian and the town of Shirley, really recognizing through what we were able to show them, recognizing that they needed to kick in more to have that understanding. In 911, the 911 department played a big role also in helping everybody understand what they should be paying in that. So
That's great.
So the good news is that the town of Ayer itself is paying what it should be paying. It's not paying anybody else's portion of this. 911, with Shirley paying more, 911 is going to be reducing their liabilities as well. So the ultimate goal is for this to be a true share communication center.
Wow, that's good, that's great news.
Yeah, and then just another thing, personnel-wise, we're holding a promotional process in December. It's under advertisement right now. Internally, is how we do them at first. So we're going to be hopefully having some sergeants be promoted to move into the positions that we have going on.
Great, well, thank you, thank you. Any other questions from anybody for the chief?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, thank you. Okay, the next item on the amended agenda was the financial reports. And Robert, we may ask you to help us with this. We got, I'm going to call the first report in this, again, this is something new, entirely new, and we're looking at doing. And Carly sent a copy of that to us. And it consists of a snapshot of the budget, and then at the end of it is some balances and everything. I was hoping Barbara was going to be here to work on this, and she prepared it. What I am going to suggest to the committee is maybe we take some time, since we only got this, what, 2 or 3 days ago? Maybe take some time and look at this and maybe circle back and talk about this more at our next meeting. And then that way I've just glanced at it and stuff. But let me ask, my first impression is this is what I was envisioning. Again, this is a new thing, is that snapshot of the budget and some balances of the stabilization funds and things like that. And any other quick beginning observations from anybody in the committee?
Funds are interesting.
That's what I expected.
Yep. So, Mr. Chair, just briefly, what we'll
Yes.
do each month, the FinCom will get this report. It shows you the year-to-date and the monthly expenditures of all of the budget lines, which you can see. And then attached to that are the balance funds for example, the UDAG stabilization, capital stabilization. So each month, first of the month, it'll be transmitted to the FinCom. It'll be posted on the FinCom webpage as well for the public. So right now, anybody from the public could go to your page and click on this report as well. And I think when Barbara can come future meeting, we can get into more detail, and we're all ears if there's information that is maybe missing, something else you'd like to see, or so forth. But I do think this is a good start as a monthly snapshot in real time.
Yes.
So,
It's great.
all right,
Thank
thank you.
Great, great. And thank, and please tell Barbara, thank you very, and Carly, thank you for her efforts. Okay.
Eric, do you want to take over? I took the first one.
Sure.
I'll type them up and send them to you.
Okay.
Sorry, Eric.
That's- Okay, let me just keep track here. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the senior center. And I want to preface this by personally apologizing to the Senior Center Committee and Dr. Petrosi. In my effort to start dialogue on the Senior Center with the Finance Committee, at our last meeting, I should have asked you folks to come and join us, and I apologize for that oversight. So as what we did discuss at that meeting was, in general, the idea was to start taking a look at the senior center and seeing what thoughts we would have on it. And some were generated. And as I mentioned, summarized in that meeting, is that we would put together a list of these, which I did. And then we were going to circle back at this meeting and look at those questions again and discuss them further. I see Dr. Petrosi and the committee is here, so I thought it would be a great opportunity. I shared the questions with the group here. In fact, we do have them on the screen under Word, I think.
Word.
Yep. And I think it would be very efficient if Dr. Petrosi and the committee want to come up and we just start addressing the questions directly, and then we can get up to speed on that, and then continue to work with the Senior Center Committee on this project, which is very valuable to the town, and has had, and I think has had a lot of work done already. So I'm really interested in hearing. And so to start, we have the questions up here, and Dr. Petrosi and committee, do you want to just go down the list then?
Sure.
Would that be satisfactory?
Yeah, I mean, first, when the Finance Committee, I approached Kurt end of August, beginning of September, and mentioned that the Senior Site Selection and Building Committee was in the process of completing its work, and we were hoping to, at some point, engage with the Finance Committee. I may have jumped the gun a little bit and kind of moved us further along in the process than perhaps I should have, so for any confusion that may have caused, I apologize. But I think it would be helpful to just kind of briefly review how we got where we're at. So in November of 2023, the Select Board appointed the Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee to find a site for a new senior center and to engage with an architect to have some conceptual design of that building done, and then prepare to go to town meeting for the purposes of having the adequate funding. So over the last almost year now, we have been meeting almost every 2 weeks, kind of moving that process along. And then at the end of the summer, we were approaching a time where we were going to be able to identify a site and begin to kind of drill down into what the building would look like and kind of start estimating what the costs might be, which is pretty much where we're at now. And again, what I would encourage your committee or any committee members to do is, if there are questions or misconceptions about where the committee is at in any particular process, feel free to reach out either to any of the committee members individually. I mean, it would be great if you could attend the meetings or look at the meetings, but there is no harm in, we're all on the email system, where are you on the budget, or what site did you select, or how do you feel about the architect, or anything like that. Because I think that those one-to-one conversations can be helpful just in kind of bringing you up to speed. And I fully understand that no individual member of the committee can speak for the committee. So it's not a case of any particular member is making a definitive statement as to the committee's policy, but I think that connection can help inform your decision-making as the process moves forward. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of communicate well and move the process along. I know that much of the town has been anxious to see this brought to fruition.
And I was just going to add that though this Senior Center Site Selection and Building Committee has been hard at work over the past year, the efforts to build a senior center date back to 2018, pre-pandemic. And so this has been something that's been on the priority list for the town for quite some time.
Just to make a quick clarification for what Mr. Curran said, we are in a feasibility study at this point in time. So we were authorized by the select board to do the task that Dennis pointed out. Part of that task was to hire a professional architectural team qualified in construction of senior centers. So we went out to bid, we did an RFP, we selected, we had, I don't know, 5 applicants, we got it down to 3 and 2, and then finally picked a gentleman who we're working with, who's done 30 senior centers in the state of Massachusetts, and somewhere in the vicinity of 60 feasibility studies. We're using his, as part of his contract, the obligation he owes us is to work through the process with us, which he's done, to develop the size of the building, the site that needs to, the number of parking spaces, the size of the site that's required. He also, simultaneous to him working with us on the design process, we were taking a look at the 50 town-owned properties with an objective to try to find a free piece of land that's owned by the town. We also went out and did 2 RFPs in 2 different years for purchase of land with no response. So we had an effort to, even if we would find a piece of land that was appropriate, try to find the funds to buy it. So at the end of the day, we ended up with an excellent piece of land. We've done test holes on the land. We've hired environmental scientists right at the moment to finish the phase 1 environmental, as well as a habitat assessment, because the property does sit within a area of critical environmental concern in town, and it's also within it what's called the natural heritage. So my experience on the planning board and being in construction and development has helped this understand this process, and because of things that came before us, we understand what needs to be done to make sure the land is appropriate. We basically have determined that it's a great piece of land. We're going to break that off. I think we showed you in the material that we're going to break off 3 to 4 acre piece of land from the 76.5 that are currently there under DPW. So that's going to give us the opportunity to concentrate only on what's required on that 3 acres. We won't have to investigate the whole wetlands and whatever might be appropriate around the entire 76 acres. So there's been a continuous effort and work that's been going on here for quite some time, as far as the development aspects are concerned. So we're basically approaching it just the same way a private developer would approach it, in researching the land, looking at what will fit, how many parking spaces, drainage requirements, and so forth and so on, and doing the testing. So if there's any confusion about the fact that the land's not appropriate, that's a misconception. So we've been working additionally with DPW continuously through the entire process. So our DPW director and the engineering team at DPW has been very helpful. They've provided us with machines to do testing. They've provided us with whatever we've asked them for, and they've attended, and they're on the committee with us. So members of the committee include Dan Van Schelk, the director of the DPW. It includes Katie, of course, who's a professional. Jim Pernard, who's basically in that kind of business. So we have a number of people qualified on the committee to take a look at this project. With the ultimate goal, we have to get back to the Board of Selectmen with a recommendation. However, we're still in very early stages because we're only in the feasibility study. We're not in a position to start a building right away. We don't have any funding to go into the final design drawings. So we're basically trying to finish the feasibility study with the funds that have been given to us by the state and by the town. And we have an excellent balance there to finish what we have to do. So by the time we get to the next step, which probably is to try to find funds to take it through the final design, including we have to do a complete site design. We have to do the whole civil engineering package. So as it turns out, one of the things we've found out through the architect verbally, but not only that, through the state looking at the documents, is that in essence, the appropriate term here is that the architect represents the design team. And the design team is headed by the architect, but subset to that is mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, plumbing, all the disciplines that are required to build a building. So it looks like it's a large fee to the architect, but it's a subset fee, to get all the other disciplines under that fee. So that's kind of where we are as far as the feasibility study. So I don't want anyone to be alarmed that we're ready to go. We're trying to get to the final recommendation, and the budgets that we've been using have been provided to us based on 2 completed facilities that he's done in the last 3 or 4 years. So the real numbers have been used in real construction numbers that's what he's provided to us. So he's made available to us and to me, and who I put it together, but the subsets of the divisions of work for those buildings. So the entire category is basically summarized in a total, but it's broken down into all the parts that are needed. So when we give a report in the future, we probably are not at this level ready to give a report of every single one of those items. I mean, what we are basically saying, the building is gonna be X, soft costs are gonna be more, site development costs, you know, all the permit, the entire package, basically, including one unfortunate situation, but fortunate or unfortunate, there are no utilities at the site we've picked. So we had to go out to National Grid for engineering to bring power down the street, and the water department is currently working on a design at no cost, which we'll be able to bid for the water line to be brought to the site. So DPW initially basically mentioned, you know, we're probably gonna have to go out for that kind of design, but they've come back, you know, and offered. So they're designing it, their engineering department. So we'll have a set of documents in the next month or so to go out and price the water line, although we have a sum in the budget now for what Dan had already given us as a budget for what he estimated through a consultant. So we're getting closer and closer to real numbers as we look at the draft budget.
And if I could interject, and I know that a couple of weeks ago, there was some, and understandably, there was some sticker shock on the committee when some of the numbers started getting tossed back and forth about, I can't believe it would ever be that much. As far as back as 3 years ago, I talked to a couple, at least two, perhaps three, who had recently completed or were in design stages for senior centers or community centers, municipal buildings in Massachusetts. And at that time, they were giving us reports of right around $1,000 a square foot. The town of Littleton is currently halfway through the construction of a senior center, which is slightly larger than the one that we're proposing, at 16,700 square feet. Their cost is 18.2 million. So as we work through the costs, we're not, and kind of watching what the architect is giving us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These numbers that we've been seeing are consistent with what we've been seeing in other towns, similar buildings in Massachusetts. And although I understand that people are concerned that it's, you know, it's a big number, the big number is, I think, unavoidable.
Yeah, none of us were happy when I mean, I'm used to building for a lot less than that, I'm sure you
Well, I
are
was
too.
gonna say,
You know,
we're paying Boston prevailing rates out here, right?
yeah, we have to do that, but
Yeah.
when I first heard $1,000 a foot, the first thing that went through my mind was, we gotta fire this guy, there's something wrong, you know? But then it's a big learning curve, is what I'm getting at, we're all in a learning curve. And, yeah, it turns out that the way they approach it is somewhat different, because I'm used to talking about building square foot numbers and then adding all the site and soft costs and ever, but the numbers he put out right away were the total cost. So the subset never even got into that discussion. It was a project cost. It's probably better to refer to it as a project cost than a building cost, is what I'm getting at, to avoid confusion.
That includes all the design fees?
It's the whole thing,
Yeah,
everything,
okay.
every piece of it at this point in time.
Administration, all that good time. Good
Exactly.
stuff.
So we're really making an effort now with the grant that we have and working internally to maybe save $1 million in the first part of the project. We've got, you know, a land for free, which could be, what, $700,000. We've got a $300,000 plus grant, and we're off and running in the testing and stuff like that. So those projected fees, which I even thought would be high, we've got solid numbers for. So we're only spending much smaller amounts for the engineering part of it because of the size of the lot and the simplicity of the lot and whatnot. So, yeah, it's a dreadful thing to think it's that much money, but Dennis is right. They told us, and we had, before this architect was selected, we did one other feasibility study in the past. It never came to fruition, but during that process, we had another architect, it was Abacus, I believe, and he was throwing around $1,000 a foot a while back. So we went through the process to not only determine what the real numbers are, but to get over this block of costs, which is amazing.
Sticker
I
shock.
mean, it's just, it's.
Thank you for that.
Right.
I'm not sure, I can only speak for myself. I don't think my concern is that the architect or whatever was overcharging or or whatnot, you know, just, just trying to goose their profit or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't, yes, it costs a ton to build a small house. So building costs are a ton. I don't know if that was kind of the specific concern, more so just the general total
Yep.
size of the building and everything in it and around it that brings it to $16 million. And while we can compare to other towns in the region, I think Littleton has a slightly larger population than Ayer. So I don't know that just comparing Littleton's cost to ours would be the best
And
option.
that's one of the things that we're doing right now is putting together a comparables list with recent local towns, recent new builds, to get an idea. And unfortunately, where we are right now, there's a big difference between pre-COVID builds and post-COVID builds. So I've been working on that with another one of the committee members, Ellen Fitzpatrick, to get together a list of comparables. We did arrive at, to answer the other part of your question, we did arrive at that number of 14,000 square feet based on the population of the town and the intended uses when we were designing the program, and knowing the space that we have right now and what works and what doesn't work in that space, and the ability to reach out to a larger and broader segment of older adults. The Executive Office of Elder Affairs, it recommends 10 square foot per senior, which would bring the town of Ayer to a 22,000 square foot building. We're not going anywhere near that number. We're at 14,000 square feet. So,
We also have several seniors that we wouldn't expect to use the senior center,
Sure.
correct? That are in
Right.
facilities that they're just not coming.
right, you're not
So
expecting 100%
I don't know if those
participation.
are included in our total number of senior population, but again, those, I don't think we would expect them to come use the
Right, but
facilities.
The metric as far as how many seniors are in town is the number that the state bases our state aid, the formula grant, is based on how many seniors are in town on the most recent census. It has nothing to do with what your current participation numbers are. So I find it best to keep all of those things kind of similar across so that you're always comparing apples and apples.
And to speak to that concern about the size of the building a little bit, as part of the architecture and the selection of the architect process, and also when Katie was working on just kind of how the room should be divided, we visited a number of different senior centers, perhaps 4 or 5 members of the committee saw 4 or 5 different senior centers. And I spoke with a number of senior center directors as well. Universally, what we heard is don't build it too small. Because for a number of them, they had constructed the building and then 10 years later were looking to add on to it in some manner or another.
And some of them didn't even make it 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we never heard, geez, you know, we could have gotten by with a little less. And I think that part of that reason is this structure should last 30 to 50 years. I mean, we are not only building for the seniors who are alive today living in Ayer, but we are building a municipal structure which will, you know, long outlive all of us. And the number of uses that it can be put to by future generations, you know.
Well, and not even future generations. The town of Ayer has over 2,200 older adults right now. We're 25% senior here in town. That number is expected to grow over time. America is aging. Ayer is aging right along with it. We are expecting the number of older adults in town to grow until the year 2060. Sorry, it will not even peak or plateau until 2060. So who we have right now versus who will be in the building 5 years from now will be dramatically different. So we're trying to build a right-sized building that will fit for the cost of the building and for the time that we expect to use it. That's going to be a right-sized building going forward.
Premature question. How do we expect to fund it, I guess what types of mechanisms are we going to use for that?
So
If I, let's,
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, though, did we jump off your list? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
no, actually, that's what I was just gonna use this as an
Great.
opportunity, because I've been making sort of notes here as we go along. We've been answering a lot of pieces of the questions and stuff, so.
So the cost of the land is free. It's
Yes, yeah,
town-owned
why don't we
land.
just, okay.
Yep. The cost of the building, and we talked about the whole project cost is
Yeah, term,
is
the project
coming in, yeah, the project cost is currently at 16.6 million. That is an estimation. There are lots of factors that are going to move around
And
there, but
you gave a great summary of how the costs were determined, and, you know, it's an ongoing that was really
Thank you.
very well done. So,
You can do it again if you want.
So,
So then in terms of the ongoing costs, once the center is open, that's something that's under development as well. I met with Chuck, the facilities director, and he put together for me an estimated yearly facilities-related costs. It was very thorough. Then on top of that, I need to add in my estimated staffing increases and programming increases. But from a facilities perspective, his estimate is right around 90,000 for the year. And if there's a custodial contract, the labor on that would be another 20,000. At my earliest estimates right now, I think I would have between 50 and 75,000 for, I'd like to have 1.5 more staff members in the building. So, and then any increases in programming are going to be small numbers compared to the numbers I just said to you. So, so that rolls up into somewhere around 200,000. Again, these are estimates. We are also checking in, we have calls out to the two most recently completed senior centers by this architect, to see where they've been open about a year now, to see where their operating costs are coming in. Chuck's estimates were based on the expenses and items that he has in all of the, town hall, police, fire, DPW, and looking at the site plan and the floor plan for, that we have to date. So I think they're a good educated guess, but like all of the other things, it's an estimate.
Okay, I have a comment and a question.
yes, Jim.
So the comment is that, I don't know, I guess that you guys put up some number from Littleton. Littleton is a more affluent town than Ayer. Nobody's comparing Littleton's high school to Ayer's high school. Because I know this is a bigger town, so I still think that if we could keep the costs down a little bit, it would be much more palatable. So I don't know if there's any room for, a little bit downward revision. I understand that, this is a building for the next 50 years. So, but I think that it's a little hard to sell something such long term. I don't know if one did, if other town construction was also, made with such a, vision in mind. The other thing was that last time at our meeting, Bob mentioned that there's possibility of having non-union contractors bid for this
You can't do that.
work.
No, I
Is that
understand, that's
possible?
why I'm asking about the funding.
So Jen, if I may just summarize real quick, and then Dr. Petroza can, the committee can finish, is as far as comparing with Littleton, you started mentioning you were also doing other comparability studies. So, and then your next question about the private developer, that's another question that we're gonna come to, Jen, a little further. That's like 2 or 3 down.
I'll
Okay. So,
chime in on this one regarding the costs and whatnot. yes, it's an objective, and it has been our objective since the beginning to try to determine the best price per square foot that we can get.
But forget price per square foot, that's prevailing marketplace, that's almost
No.
immaterial.
How would you say that?
Because we don't really have control over price per square foot.
Of course we don't. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to determine, we have a whole process that has to continue after we get design, to price out every single piece, decide if we're gonna have board, or we're gonna have paint, we're gonna have trim, whatever the components are, the ceiling type. So we'll be looking intensely through the architect. He's gonna
So are you
specify.
suggesting that
We have
the
a-
trim and the paint is more impactful to the cost of the project
No.
than the overall size of the building?
No.
All of
Okay.
those things, all of them.
I'm just saying that our goal is.
That's what Jen was trying to get to.
Yeah, okay,
So-
well, that will be determined too, through more work. Yeah.
So, I mean, for this particular meeting, it may be a lengthier discussion than we can get into on that matter. But I hear your concern that, do we need all this? Or couldn't we get by with something smaller?
Right.
Or is this excessive for a town of our size? And I think the answer, when we drill down with that with Katie, is, what kinds of programs will we be able to offer? How many more people will be able to attend the center? What kind of, as the architect explained, and as many senior center directors have gone over with us, the big three things in terms of an aging population are physical fitness, nutrition, and socialization. To the extent that this building improves those things, those three things, for our senior population, it will be a success. You will get far more bang for your buck from this building than almost any other building in town. Because people who age in their homes will have better nutrition, will be physically fit longer, which will mean they will literally live longer, and they will live better. That's what this building is about. Now, at 14,500 square feet, we'll, at a later date perhaps, go over how many square feet is the fitness room, the commercial kitchen, the activity rooms, the administrative spaces, et cetera. But I think the building is needed, and I think that we can, in fact, justify that. But
And I think as I mentioned last time I was here, that what it means to be a senior is a really varied concept. It's like when you're 60-something and recently retired or not even retired yet, what your needs are very different than when you're in your late 80s and early 90s. And so being able to provide space and programming to people across that spectrum is huge. And in the existing center, we can't do that. We have 2 rooms. And we can barely program those 2 rooms at the same time because there isn't enough parking. So, when I look at, and thank you, that was said as well or better than I would have said it, so thank you. In the spaces, when you have them spread out like this and you have multiple rooms, you can provide that spectrum. So, in the big downstairs room, we would have a large movement-focused exercise classes going on for younger and more able-bodied seniors during the day. Those are very intimidating to our older seniors. So I need a space that's not right there in the front, that is a little bit more removed upstairs in this space over here for folks who are rehabbing from knee surgeries, who are rehabbing from hip surgeries, who are having functional impairments to their mobility, and they're learning a fall prevention based exercise class, or they are it's a Parkinson's specific exercise class. So you need space to have both of those things happening at the same time, because there's a need for both of those things in this town, but they have to have ample space. There are not enough hours in the day to fit those things in one room. Same thing for arts and crafts, current events. What might appeal to you or to you, Dennis, is very different than what would appeal to a recent retiree or someone who is dealing with the loss of a spouse. And so being able to offer programs at a time that is convenient for folks and in a fitting to their life stage, requires some square footage. It just does. Intergenerational programs in this space that need to happen at a specific time during early release days, during right after the end of the school day. You can't interrupt other programs that happen in the early afternoon to do those because, again, everybody wants the programs that we're going to be able to offer here. So you do just need a certain amount of square feet to make it work.
But again, this is another comment I'm sure you guys have done a lot of legwork on this already, is that do you have an idea that what percentage of the senior population actually will use the senior center? Like, my husband is a senior, but I never thought of going to the senior center. And I took him to Harvard Senior Center. He didn't even like that. So I don't really know. When you get to the retirement stage of your life, you already have your circle of friends. And how many I'm sure there are a lot of people who are willing to make new friends, because senior center is a place for you to meet new people, and unless you already have neighbors and who want to come with you. I'm just wondering, I have no idea. I'm absolutely not against a new senior center at all. I think Ayer needs a new senior center. I'm just trying to gauge the right size and see if because I think that if you have all this wonderful program in mind, do you know that when you offer this program, will people come? For example, I think a lot of active retirees already have their book club, their gym membership, their, like they have already planned out their day. So are they going to come to, do this activities at the senior center?
So I think you're bringing up a very good point, and there is data that suggests that participation goes up between 40 and 60% when a new center is opened. That is sustained over, the data I've seen is over a 3-year period. It is sustained over that period of time. And I think you're right, Jen. When someone first retires, they do have a lot of networks in place. And so you're looking to fill some of those, fill a different set of needs during that time. Maybe it's a recently retired group that meets once a month for a coffee. But over time, those situations change. Ties loosen, they break. And as we get older, sometimes health changes. Sometimes people move to be close to their adult children in other towns. And there's a need to keep and to build new social ties. And it's something that, as a young retiree, it may be hard to imagine. But as someone who's worked in this field for over 20 years, I can tell you there's a huge difference between what people need and want and what they think their life is going to look like when they're in their 60s and what it looks like in their late 70s and their early 80s and their late 80s. And so by having a robust senior center, you're able to bring people in for in their younger ages as volunteers doing fun social programs. You build that support, you build that network around them, you build the trust so that over time, as needs change and they grow, you already have that relationship with the person. And so you are able to sort of see that whole process through. And I do think that a vital senior center that's offering a wide variety of programs, to Dennis's point, really does make for a happier, healthier, more independent senior. They help combat the effects of depression and isolation and loneliness. And it is something that we need in our town as a way to keep the town not only culturally balanced, but financially balanced as well. We need households that are empty nesters.
Are really the best contributors to the town's finance, because they will want the transfer station sticker, everything. Seniors sort of like when they have time in their hands, and if they all come to town and try to petition for discounts, I sometimes wonder if we want to build Ayer, as a town attractive to seniors. I don't really know. This is not something for me to do. I'm just throwing out my thoughts.
So, well, Jen, thank you very much, and I am going to interject because we want to keep moving down the questions, and I think Jen and Eric, you have brought up really good questions that need to be continued to look at, and have also been looked at, I think, in other presentations. And I think the important thing to remember is going back that this mandate for the senior center has gone back so many years. And it's already been said and everything. So again, these are all quite good questions, and we need to continue to look at them. So I do want to move on to the next two. I think this next two questions sort of go together. How is Ayer financing the project, and what other funding sources are being explored?
So with a project this size, we would be going to town meeting for a bond, and we need to request it for the total project cost. Then, because no grant is guaranteed, and it's a sort of a chicken and egg as far as getting grants for a project that doesn't have town meeting approval, like which comes first. So typically in a project this size, you're asking for the total project cost, to borrow up to but not to exceed this total project cost. Then you're trying to actually bring down the cost from there so that when the bond is issued, it's not issued for that total dollar value. So you can see if you can issue it for less than that. So, for example, the $300,000 that we are working with right now, which is the Housing Choice Grant, there is a second round of that funding that we would be competitive for. We're looking into how much that is. I'd be hearing some conflicting numbers in the order of $1 to $3 million. There's also CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant funds.
These are state funds.
So CDBG's federal, and then Housing Choice would be state. There's also money that will be available from our state representatives to go towards specific projects. They can earmark funds for that. We're looking at various other options as far as aging and community living grants. We've started looking into the Broadband Institute's grants. The Massachusetts Cultural Council offers grants. Not just the senior centers are recipient of their cultural performance grants every year, but they also have a line that is for cultural spaces up to $100,000. The senior center certainly will have a lot of, between music, art, dance, things like that will be going on there. We would be competitive for that cultural space grant. I've got a list of about 15 or 20 of them that we're going to be looking into, all of those with the hope that, we write them, we take a little bit off here, a little bit off there, to try and bring it down as much as we can. None of those are guaranteed. No grant is ever guaranteed, but it is certainly a priority of the committee, as well as the town manager's office, to bring the costs down as much as possible.
If I may say, if you folks have suggestions as to where we might look for money, we're.
I have one.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for the donation.
Go ahead.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go
I'm
ahead.
cutting you off.
Yeah.
So, my experience as a developer and as a contractor is that there is a means that I understand to be true to be able to build the building at local rates. The way that's done is that we put it out to a public proposal request for a developer to build and lease it back to the town. That way you forego.
Do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I have submitted proposals to the state for housing their their server building for a backup server after 9/11. And that was the process. So, you forego the prevailing rate requirement by doing that. I don't know, whether that makes sense or not, because it becomes, somebody's gonna be making a profit, whoever that is, Yeah, but just throwing it out there for
It's
thought.
an interesting thought. I mean, it's way above my pay grade.
So, if I can, going to interject real quickly, just to finish, because we're sort of moving on to the, actually, there's sort of three questions here that are sort of, and again, it's addressing the same topic: how Ayer finance a project, other funding sources, and then has the committee considered the idea of using private developer and lease back, which is what you're bringing up now.
Right.
And what I just wanted to, Katie, you just talked well about, the other funding sources, and also touched on the bond issues and what have you. And I just wanted to sort of finish up that question, referring back to the memo where you and Robert have looked at the general idea of how we work through the funding through the town meeting, select board, and all that process. The memo of September 11th,
Yeah, and-
which has a lot of detail on that particular question. You've sort of addressed the funding sources, the grants and stuff, and then, of course, the wonderful ideas that we'll all have for you. So then, just to bring us then sort of full circle then to this third item then.
Could I just add one last thing to
Yeah.
that, Mr. Chair? So,
Yeah.
I also forgot in that list, there are some great volunteers in town who've recently started a Friends of the Ayer Senior Center group, with the goal of doing some fundraising and collecting donations and networking in that way. They're just getting started, just getting off the ground, but they will certainly be a piece of that puzzle as well.
Okay,
Good, thank you.
thanks.
So, Robert, if
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and just before to Bob's question, which is a good one, just on the financing piece, as we get more specifics, and we're still in that process on the numbers, of course, Barbara and I would come back to the FinCom and get into the nitty-gritty of the borrowing details and the financing. And Barbara, that's her wheelhouse along with bond counsel. But as mentioned, at some point, we would be asking town meeting to authorize up to a certain amount. And as Katie mentioned, as grants and so forth come in, we wouldn't necessarily need to borrow all of it. And she wouldn't borrow all of it in one fell swoop anyway. And one thing that the FinCom should know is Barbara has already done the analysis, and she can speak to it in more detail with the town's debt schedule and borrowing capacity. And the project does fit within the town's borrowing capacity. So that's one of the first things we check. There is ample room, now we get into terms, to borrow that. Some municipalities are not in that case. Now, don't kill the messenger, but to Bob's idea, which is, I did watch the last meeting. I'm sorry I wasn't here.
That's okay.
And I checked with town council. So on the question about using a private developer and leaseback option, and I don't know the specifics of your projects, and I know that our friends at Mass Development and Devon's, as a quasi, there's ways they can do things.
Right.
Unfortunately, as far as I understand it, with the town of Ayer, we have to follow Chapter 30B, which is the state procurement law. So the first thing is, if we were to consider a private entity to build something on town land, first we'd have to do a whole competitive bid process with that for the land, which would involve town meeting, okay?
Yep.
The second thing is under, and I'll get more detail if any of you are having trouble sleeping. Under 30B in another chapter, 149, and the Supreme Court of Massachusetts in 2010 also ruled in this, that if we were to do that, if we were to have a private developer build a structure and then lease it back to the town, that developer would still be subject to the Massachusetts public prevailing wage and public
Really?
construction law.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
so, in talking with town council, and I appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking, Bob, and I know in your experience and so forth, the problem is that unfortunately, the Inspector General would still put us subject to the prevailing wage, we would have the issue of also a competitive bidding process on the town land. And this would raise a lot of red flags. It's a great idea out of the box
No, that's
thinking.
okay. So
Yeah.
the rules,
Yeah.
2010 rules subsequent to what
Right, and there's
when I
been,
made my, you
Yep.
know, I went through the bidding process, and the
Yep.
state was
Mhm.
totally open to that as a means of
Yep.
saving money,
Yep.
ironically.
Yes.
Can I ask,
Well,
was it
the unions may have helped close that.
Well, I'm not going there, because
Can I
that,
ask, was
I've
it
got a
the
really
state?
heated,
Was it the state or was it Mass Development?
it was the
Engineering?
state, it was for their server backup
Yeah.
building. As a matter of fact, I proposed it for Devon's here, and I was second. You know, I was second in the process, so. And it was open shop. That wasn't an issue at the time.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah, some political, you know,
Not an
Uh,
expert on this, but I did some work on it. And part of what I just believe, I'm gonna say, I read it, but it's, who knows, because it's legal, was if a project is given any government funding, it needs to use the prevailing wage law.
And then that's,
That's-
and that's,
So it
That's-
throws out the grants, it
that's the
throws out
catch.
this, it
Yes,
throws out all
that's-
the other
that's
stuff.
the catch.
the
But I
cat's-
can
So
tell you
government funding.
that they don't give you enough money to
Right.
offset the
No, they
delta.
won't, they won't, no, they won't.
Yeah.
Right, so anyways,
Yeah,
enough
it's-
said.
It's
You know,
It's just
it's
one-
just a lot of learning.
one last point, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate it, and Mr. France brought this up earlier, and I know he has dealt with this as a developer. On the issue, not only is the issue of prevailing wage one of the hugest challenges that municipal entities deal with, it's like an occupational hazard, it drives the costs way up. Added to it, the town of Ayer, within the prevailing wage districts, and we have fought about this for 20 years.
I know.
Ayer is grouped in along with Cambridge in western suburbs of Boston. They have these districts. We've argued for years that Ayer being in the frontier of that district, it's not quite, but that's state law. So,
Ironically, they're all the same. You can be in Springfield, and you're
Right.
still mandated for
same
Boston
number.
prevailing.
Right.
Right,
Um,
so anyways,
so-
enough said. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Robert, thank you, Robert. So, okay, so I just want to keep on moving down the list. I think we're doing pretty well. Before we go any further, any other comments, I think, over what we've looked at so far? Okay. So the next thing on the list is, do we need a center this size for the town of Ayer? I think we've pretty much already discussed that, and, between Dennis and Ken and Katie, yeah. So, okay, so then why don't we go ahead and move to the next question. Will the center be available for town meetings or other uses?
So I'll speak for myself as the COA director, because I don't think that the building committee has a position on this. But as the COA director, I think it's a great idea for it to be a senior center during the day and during the selected evening hours that the senior center will add on in the new space. But to use that building as a community resource when it's not being used as a senior center, I think is a wonderful way for more people to see, enjoy, and get the benefit from it. I already anticipate that there will be, like I said, early release days, early afternoon activities, that will be intergenerational programming to begin with. But in the evening, this room, for example, is very busy for evening meetings. There would be, up-to-date, technologically up-to-date rooms in the new senior center that, again, I'm only speaking for myself as the COA director. Other boards or committees could meet there. That large multi-purpose space would be a great resource to the community. I was talking to Luke at the library about his maximum, head count he can have for some programs and being able to offer larger scale programs there. I'm certain there are larger town functions that could happen there. Community organizations that could potentially rent out the space, individuals that could rent out the space. Before I was in Ayer, I was in Townsend, and they had a model where the senior center was had a shared large room with the library, and we found it to be a really great marriage between the two departments, and that space was used for both of the departments and then for the community in the off hours. And you had a policy and a procedure in place, and it worked really well.
Any questions or comments on that item?
Thanks for your extensive work on the program. I know it's a lot of effort.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
More than I bargained for.
It's gonna get there eventually.
Yeah, I just was making, I've been making notes as I go along, and one of the things that I said, thank you again very, very much, and we're gonna address the last question about maybe having one of us pop in with you, but I'm just gonna jump off of what hearing tonight, the work and the detail and thoroughness that's been done is really, really, really good.
And there's substantial documentation on the building committee website, you know, all the drawings, you know, the what do they call them, schematics and.
Concepts.
What's that?
Concepts and
Concept plans, and the
Concepts.
floor plans, and just kind of some of the preliminary information.
So are there other building proposals in all of that, or is it just the one? Just from what you said, I wasn't sure
No,
what you were saying.
there's just the one
Oh,
building.
okay.
Yeah. But you can see how it progressed and how it changed, and what it's gonna hopefully look like, and the size of the rooms and that kind of thing.
Yeah, all of the documents for the entire year are there, and you can read them in date order and see how it develops. As are all the recordings from the meetings, if you wanna, also if you can't sleep and you wanna watch something late at night.
Well, that's what I was sort of, when I was making the detailed is, Ken, with where you were going, I was like, you're not just pulling this stuff out of thin air, this is.
Not pulling this out of
Absolutely not.
Believe me, we're drilling every hole and
Right.
digging every ditch, what do we have to do?
And I think that's sort of one of the charges of the finance committee is that we are reviewing and making sure that, I'm actually looking at a little thing, if you go to our website, there's a little blurb that talks about is ensuring expenses are quantified. Detailed, and so I think that's being done, and it's been very informative. So would you consider having a finance committee join the senior center committee for the time being?
I mean,
It was an idea that was floated, and I guess we really didn't discuss it that much either.
It's up to the board of selectmen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is a good point. And then if we were to go in that direction, again, the select board would have to actually votes on it.
No, right,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
in the meantime, you're always
Yes.
welcome to attend.
mhm.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm gonna just take this up. Real quickly, as a committee here, Finance Committee, what's the feeling on possibly doing that? And again, I realize we're already sitting on rate review, capital planning by board, so
We can figure it out.
okay. Maybe we'll talk about it in the next meeting, though?
Yeah.
Okay. And then would you be open to that, though?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
All right, so we'll pick that up again as an idea in the next meeting and stuff. And again, I think one thing we did discuss last time was us individually visiting, going to your meetings and definitely visiting the senior center, which is eye-opening. And I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned to our group, but I think I saw you at the Festville.
Right.
I had to do a Home Depot run, and which is going to Leominster, and I take the back ways. I said, oh, well, the back way, so I go down Bishop Road. So I actually pulled over and took started walking around the site and stuff like that. So
Why don't we just to comment on that, Mr. Chair? So when the surveyor, first of all, it's in a corner, so it's fenced in. So two sides of the site are currently protected for security because there's a fence there. So when the engineer, the surveyor, finishes the looking at the lot and so forth, and we talk about that and getting into topography. We're gonna stake it. So part of his contract would be to stake it, so that our committee can go out. So that would be a good time if people wanted to join us at that point in time, when it was visible, instead of walking around and guessing where things are.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking through the
Yeah,
fence.
so we will have it staked eventually.
Which is what old men do.
Yeah, really?
Go to construction. There's actually an Italian term for that, but
Okay,
where,
so- That might be a good spot
Yeah.
to check it out. And we did the same thing for the building layout. So the proposed location of the building was staked in the field for the testing, and the location of the potential elevator shaft was staked in the field. So when we did the testing with the DPW for deep hole testing, we excavated where the architect told us to excavate, and in the location of the elevator shaft as well, which is gonna be deeper. So we've already looked at the soil types and whatnot.
Yeah,
Got
that's right.
information on the hydraulics and the soil type, the water, and you name it. So anyhow, thank you.
Anything else? Again, thank you very, very much for coming this
Thanks for
evening.
having us.
Thank you
Thanks for
for
having us.
working with us, and look forward.
Nice job. I'll get together with you.
Yeah.
What's that? We'll get together with you sometime.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. But I don't want to bother you.
No, you're not. Glad to.
Okay. So moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the schedule next meeting. Actually, there's going to be two parts to that. The town meeting is coming up on Monday, October 28th, the special town meeting. As Andrew, we've attended in the past and sat on the stage. I will be out of town.
I should be here.
Okay, we are, I was touching base with Robert on what we might be doing, and the planning board, because there's, most of the warrant is specific to that, is going to be on the stage. So one or two of us would just need to be in the audience, available if there might be any questions of the finance committee.
Okay.
So we wouldn't even need to be on stage.
Correct. Yeah. So we don't have to wear ties and stuff.
Okay.
I'm the only one that wore a tie anyway.
I can wear a tie
Pulling the
next.
seats up for April.
I can wear a
Thanks.
tie next time.
I'm kidding, I'm being silly. Okay, so then, so I know Andrew, you'll probably attend. and then-
around.
Okay.
I'll be in it. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Planning boards.
I'll be in the crowd.
Oh, okay, so,
I can wear a tie if you like. I'll wear a bow tie. How's that?
only if you wear a seersucker suit. Okay, and then, our next meeting is going to be,
The calendar.
November 7th?
oh, thank you, Eric.
Thank goodness.
Thursday, November 7th at 6 PM. And Robert, I'm going to ask, just float by you, could we consider maybe asking either the fire chief or DPW to do a short presentation? And maybe if you could get back to me, if you can check with who, if the fire chief or Dan, which one would be available, and then I can make sure I add it to the agenda.
I will, and maybe it's up to the committee, I would maybe suggest the fire chief, because he could also talk about some of the initial impacts we're seeing from the hospital closure that could impact the budget.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So,
I know every time I drive down the road, I see one of the air ambulances going past me.
Yeah, so
They're
Kurt, I will
all the
confirm
time.
with you, but for the fire chief, November 7th.
Okay, so I'm going to put then it, for November 7th, the department head report will be the fire chief. And also, if we can, hope Barbara or Carrie, would be able to take the report, these new finance reports, and to look at them a little bit more detail, learn more about them, and because again, at first glance, wow, it's good,
It's nice
so,
to have.
Yeah.
I actually read it.
Oh, well, then you can make the presentation.
I just want to know, there's money moving in and out of those funds, right? So obviously those things have to get voted on, right? Those funds have to get allocated through voting, right? Some of those cap stabilization, all that stuff.
Yeah, capital and stabilization required town meeting. The UDAG is just the select board.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, that's great. So those are details we can start drilling into in future meetings.
Keeping an eye on those select people.
Okay, are there any public comments?
You guys count?
Actually, a
Oh.
trivia question.
Yes.
Do you know what we spend on the monthly report on the finance committee? Like, there's $196, so how do we spend our money? I have no idea.
It's printing, isn't it?
I don't know what we spent.
I thought it was printing.
Do you happen to know that, Robert?
I believe
There is a,
it's your membership with the MMA finance
Oh.
group.
oh, that's right, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yeah, did,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank-
I'm just curious.
oh, yeah, no, I've always been curious. And did,
Because if you look at the percentage, it's like, we spend a lot of money. Because we spend more than a quarter. And I thought, oh, what did we spend on?
yes.
Okay,
that's true.
thank you, Robert.
Okay. Oh, and then I had brought up that speaking of the MMA, there was their meeting, I think, on November 1st, Saturday. I know it's close. Did anyone have interest in
I
that?
won't be going to it.
Yeah, okay. Something in the future.
Still
I
thinking.
don't think I will either. I might have put it in my calendar, but I have to check.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Do we have a motion to?
I'll let someone else do it.
Okay.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I.
Very good.
Bye, Jen.
Meeting at 7:27 on October 17th. Thank you.